You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to Digging Up Ancient Aliens. This is the podcast where we examine strange claims about alternative history and ancient aliens in popular media. Do their claims hold water to an archaeologist, or are there better explanations out there? We are now on episode 64. I am Frederick, your guide into the world of pseudo-archaeology. This time, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a case study of a country where the government has started to promote its preferred historical narrative. While some might not call that alternative history or pseudo-history, I would argue that it's, well, at least overlapping. So, we will look at Poland and their memory laws, how the government is policing museums and trying to silence research on the Polish complicity in the Holocaust. We will also look at Polish history to see how it came to be, how it is today, and what national memory this politician is drawing from when they create these narratives. We will look at how they create emotionally triggering museums while leaving out the parts of the history that put Poland in a bad light. We will see how PIS, the ruling party, or PiS as I probably will refer to it further in the episode, is trying to silence museum directors and professors that don't follow the party line. In the past, we have discussed how governments in, for example, Bosnia and Indonesia have used state funds, state influence to promote pseudo-scientific projects. This isn't that far off. Sure, it's fewer aliens, fewer Atlantis, fewer lost civilization, but it's still essential, important for us to keep our eyes on this type of let's call it alternative history in times like these. And this might be also the first episode that might get me into some legal trouble, but we will see how that develops. And on that note, I want to thank all of those who financially support the show through Patreon or the membership portal. This donation is very helpful. I'm very thankful for your support. And if you want to support the show, well, wait till the end of the episode. I will tell you exactly where you can go to do this. And remember that you find sources, resources, and reading suggestions on the website, diggingupancientaliens.com. And just a quick content warning. We will bring up World War II and the genocide taking place during this time. There's nothing graphic in this episode really, but this is just a heads up that we will talk a bit about these war crimes that took place during this war. So now that we have finished up our preparation, let's dig into the episode. Welcome, adventurers, to a unique podcast journey where the lines between the mystical and historical blur. Join us in the podcast and my travel where fantasy meets reality in the most unexpected of ways. Imagine a world where archaeologists aren't just digging through the earth, but through the layers of magic and mystery. Meet Ash and Tilly, your fearless guides, armed with nothing but their trusty travels and a wealth of archaeological knowledge, theory, and experience. They are on a quest to explore uncharted territories where the wonders of the past intertwine with the fantastical. Each new episode takes you through thrilling new worlds, bringing with magic, mayhem, and mind-boggling discoveries. Have you ever wondered what to do if you find vampire teeth in a Bronze Age burial? Or ponder the possibility of sampling ectoplasm? And what about studying the remains of dragons? How would one even begin to approach such a task? Ash and Tilly don't just navigate these questions alone. They are joined by a cadre of specialist guests, adding depth and insight into every mystical discovery. Together, they are not just uncovering artifacts, they are unraveling the mysteries of a realm where archaeology and mythology collide. So if you're curious to find out if fantasy really is so far from reality, and if you're eager to delve into the untold stories where the past meets the paranormal, And My Travel is your ticket to an extraordinary adventure. Subscribe now. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at the archaeologicalpodcastnetwork.com. Unearth the secrets of the past and explore the realms where fantasy and archaeology intertwine. Join And My Travel as they pave the way through the unknown, one episode at a time. On the third floor of a small museum in the little town of Elbląg, we step into a war-torn landscape. In the background, we hear ominous music, a haze of bullets approaching us like warring messages of death. There's crying somewhere in the background, the sounds of screeching metal echoing in the hall. On the first text that we meet as we step into the world of despair goes as follows. Whoever crosses my walls becomes my walls. Whoever speaks about or touches the remains might see my former inhabitants and will not forget them, will not forget me. I am an inhabited land, a populated place. I have no borders. I am ever expanding and no longer just a city. I am an endless story. Now it's your turn, and I invite you to consider who you are. Are you a passerby, a random traveler, my inhabitant, my body? You stand at the moment of my downfall. We then move through history where Poland is repeatedly the victim of aggression from its neighbors. The Vikings came and settled in Poland, as did the Teutonic Knights and the Mongols, and then came the Swedish deluge that washed over the nation, the partition of Poland between Austria, Russia, and Prussia, the Napoleonic Wars, World War I, and, of course, World War II. While we are met with a war-torn nation conquered by others, the Polish inhabitants are painted as victims. But while we have this notion of victimhood, the Polish people are also portrayed as being prepared to die on their feet. But why are we really talking about this? Well, while it's fun to poke holes in the ancient alien theory and the Atlantis claims, we must keep an eye, as I mentioned in the beginning, on the alternative history that's kind of going under the radar. Alternative history has unfortunately snuck its way into politics, something we see in both Bosnia and Indonesia that we have talked about before, their state-sponsored pyramid hunts. There are, however, more nefarious alternative histories that being state-sponsored. Poland is an excellent example of this. They both have memory laws and a historical narrative that's set by the state. To fully understand all of this, we need to look at several things: Polish history, the history being promoted today in Poland, and, well, the memory laws themselves. So in front of us, we have a case study on how alternative history can be more than aliens and, in a sense, even worse. But let's get back into the history that we found at the Museum of Elbląg. A floor down in this museum, we encounter another immersive exhibition. This time we start a journey in World War II and get to experience the life in Elbląg and the Polish resistance that were fighting the Nazi, but some were captured, put in camps, and, of course, executed and massacred. We see apartments ravaged by German soldiers, and we later get to experience the life on the thumb of the Soviet Poland behind the Iron Curtains. And the museum makes an excellent job of immersing the visitor in a historical narrative. But if you lack a connection to Poland, you might get a whiff of rat around here somewhere. You notice it even more clearly if you first start your tour at the museum at the exhibition on the Viking settlement Truso, or as it's known today, Janov Pomorski. This exhibition offers both text and explanation in Polish and English, but the two exhibitions I've been talking about so far are solely in Polish. The target audience is Polish adult and school children visiting the museum, not people visiting from elsewhere. And this type of highly emotional history narrative is not some sort of isolated occurrence here in Elbląg. As Ruta Kaczalowskaite puts it in a paper, this trend has been going on for almost 20 years now. While some museums have gone for the full immersive experience, there are also examples of museums who try to go sort of the middle route. One example of this is the Museum of the Second World War in Gdansk. While having a more maybe not sterile but traditional exhibition with artifacts and objects on display, there are also this immersive element there. You can, for example, walk down a street from 1941 where Jews are not allowed to go into stores. In another section of the museum, you walk through a bit of Gdansk that's bombed to pieces with tanks going straight through these smoldering ruins. You can walk around the cattle cars that took the Jews to the different concentration camp. And what impresses me with this museum when visiting it was the fact that they told the story of Nanking and the Ainfu, or the sexual slaves used by the Japanese army during World War II. I will return to what we don't find in this museum a bit later. Now, while the World War Museum in Gdansk is a little bit more neutral, or what we should call it, we still see this narrative of victimhood and isolation, a feeling that was enforced when you exit the museum. So if you made your way out of the museum in the past, a couple of years ago, you were presented with a video, and this video showed the experience of a fugitive in a modern war zone. And it was a time to reflect on what you had witnessed at the museum and how these experiences can be found still today in these different war zones, like in Syria or Ukraine. Today, you're not able to see this particular video. Instead, there's a new film in place that was produced to be more in line with the ruling party's policies, Law and Justice, PIS, historical policy, named Niezwyciężeni, or in English, The Unconquered. This video has, as Kaczalowskaite so well described it, quote, emotionalized language that offers insight to the official memory narrative and its associated emotional dynamics that the PIS government seeks to elicit among viewers. And the video was produced by a company called IPN TV and did not work with a sparse budget, it seems. The animation itself is stunning, and the English version is narrated none other than Boromir, or Sean Bean if you prefer. He did not die in the end, if you wonder. I'd like you to listen a little bit on this narration and pay attention to what ideas they seem to promote, because we will see these again later in our story.
First, Germany attacks. Then Soviet Russia. We don't give up, despite being left on our own. We create an underground state, complete with a government, an army, schools, and courts. We suffer 2 occupations. The Germans murder millions of Polish civilians. The Soviets deport Poles in cattle cars to gulags in the east. They shoot over 20,000 officers during the Katyn massacre. And hundreds of thousands of Poles are forced into slave labor in the inhuman lands of the Soviet Union. Paratroopers make their way to occupied Poland to support the underground state. while our counterintelligence acquires secret plans of the enemy. There are Poles who save Jews, despite the threat of the death penalty. We create resistance movements, even within the German concentration camps. We are the first to alert the world about the Holocaust, though politics appear to be more important than human lives, and nobody listens to us. Polish Jews fight the Germans in the Warsaw Ghetto without even a chance for success. Our nation comes up from the underground and fights in the Warsaw Uprising. We break the German Enigma code, saving millions of lives, but in exchange for all that we do, we are betrayed. The free world distances itself from us, leaving us behind the Iron Curtain. Despite our scars from the war, we still resist. The Pope gives us strength. Workers' strikes spread throughout Poland. The communists lose. The Iron Curtain falls. The war is over. We prevail because we do not beg for freedom. We fight for it.
The video is created to create a feeling with the highly emotional language. It enforces this idea of Polish victimhood and abandonment, themes that are deeply woven into Polish history, as we will see. But note here that the video portrays everything black or white. The Poles are portrayed as heroic and rightful, while the others, the outsiders, are the only ones committing these evil acts, either as aggressors or in the role as spectators. But where did this type of immersive museum concept start? To find the answer to this, we need to go to Warsaw and back to the year 2004 and the grand opening of the Uprising Museum. The museum was a first of its kind and was created on the initiative of Lech Kaczynski from PIS. Visitors would be able to be submerged in the history and the suffering of the Warsaw citizen during the uprising that took place between the 1st of August and the 2nd of October in 1944. And if you have the opportunity, you should definitely go and visit, because it really is an experience, so to say. Since then, when PIS rose to more, national power, the party has started to appoint a museum director that again follow the party lines, and we start to see these type of exhibitions all across Poland, and has become a quite large part of the Polish museum scene. All follow the party line regarding what history or what version of history the public should be able to encounter in these spaces. And this historical version PIS promotes is not only limited to museum, but also popular media. This enforces the idea of these heroic Poles which are left to fend for themselves against the world, which either doesn't care or is out to harm them. On television, there are shows like Czas Honoru Powstanie or Time for Honor, Uprising, a TV show that follow a couple of Polish youth that are fighting in the resistance during the Warsaw Uprising. And this show is accompanied by songs like Dziewczyna z granatem, or in English, Girls with Grenades.
Dziewczyno z granatem w ręce, dziewczyno w zielonej sukience. Warszawa się broni, walka trwa, o wolność, o honor, o kraj. Do broni dziewczyno kochana, do broni chłopaku mój. Wnet wolna będzie Warszawa, do broni, po wolność na bój.
Fitting all with this preferred historical narration. So to better understand where these ideas originate from and to better understand Poland today, we need to have a quick look at the historical past. While we could easily spend a semester trying to cover the history of Poland to better understand the nation today, it's a little bit out of the scope of this podcast. As we initially noted, Poland has had several occupations through history. Now, I want to focus on a specific period during the 18th century when Poland was split into bits and pieces and handed to Russia, Germany, and Austria. Poland's participation seems to be where much of the Polish self-image we see today originates. So, we're back in time. The year is 1569, and a union between Poland and Lithuania was created in the town of Lublin. This would create the largest state in Europe. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth would last until 1795. How was such a large and robust country divided up like a cake among siblings? We can spend, again, hours on the subject, and as usual, you can find more reading suggestions on the episode page if you want to learn more. Now, here comes the SparkNotes version. And leading up to 1772 and the first partition of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the country had been drained by endless wars with Sweden and Russia and the Ottoman Empire. There also this large plague outbreak that wiped out at least a quarter of the population, weakening the Polish state even more. And add to this, the political structure of Poland-Lithuania. Some historians claim that the state was a bit too democratic for its own good. And it's something that could be discussed, however, while Poland-Lithuania had a king as a ruler, the same, and that's the, what should we call it, the Polish parliament of the time, limited the power of the ruler quite a lot. They had a two-chamber parliament, and they had the final say on all the laws issued by the king and had the power to create rules and policies on their own on top of this. While this to our modern ear sounds very familiar and not really over-the-top democratic, each member of the same had liberum veto, the power of standing up and say "nie pozwalam" or "I don't allow this." In Sweden, we have a saying that when a meeting is very unfruitful and not a single decision can be made, it's Polsk riksdag, or Polish government. And this expression's origin is this liberum veto, the veto right, because if a member of the Szlachta, the nobility, stood up and cried "nie pozwalam," the session ended and nullified the past legislation that had been made up to that point this day. Something that, of course, was taken advantage of by all other countries around Poland who did not want Poland, Lithuania to make certain decisions or try to destabilize the country from within. So this is the position that Polish-Lithuania found itself in. War after war with surrounding powers, all of them interfering by providing influence on the inside by bribing the Szlachta, and there's even uprisings around in the Commonwealth, for example. In an attempt to stabilize the situation, a few partitions form the Confederation of Bar, and this is a group of nobles who group together trying to defend against outside and inside threats, such as the Kolevyshina rebellion in modern Ukraine, where Cossacks revolted against the unfair Polish-Lithuanian treatment of them. And this culminated in a massacre of Polish nobility and Jews by peasants egged on by the Cossacks. And the largest of these slaughters was the massacre of Uman, where thousands lost their life. How many that died isn't exactly known. I've seen numbers ranging from 2,000 to 12,000, maybe with up to 100,000 during the whole stretch of the Kolevyshina rebellion. Fellow archaeology lovers, science nerd and history enthusiast, have you ever dreamt of showcasing your passion for our history and science? Dig no further. Welcome to the official merchandise store for your favorite podcast, Digging Up Ancient Aliens. Embark on a journey through time with our exclusive collection. Wrap yourself in the mysteries of the past with our range of themed shirts, mugs, and apparel. Each piece tells a story about your passions and podcast preference. And for the devoted archaeology aficionados, unveil our latest treasure, the Archaeology Mafia t-shirt. It is more than just apparel. It's a statement, a tribute to those who dig deeper, question the unknown, and unravel the secrets of our ancestors. These are not just merchandise, they are future relics from a time yet to be fully understood. Symbols of your dedication to unveiling the truth behind ancient aliens and the real wonders of our past. Join the crew of Digging Up Ancient Aliens, wear your curiosity, flaunt your knowledge, and join the Archaeology Mafia. Visit our store now and you will get an offer you can't refuse. Let's keep the spirit of exploration alive. Log on to diggingupancientaliens.com/store and grab your piece of history. Remember, the past is always present. So the end of the Poland-Lithuanian Commonwealth is drawing close. There are 3 countries that will essentially use Poland-Lithuania as a buffet. To the east, we find Catherine the Great, who used power, money, and influence to get a man that she thought loyal to her, Stanislav August Poniatowski, in the position of King of the Commonwealth. Catherine hoped that this will develop into this area becoming a sort of Russian satellite state. To the west, we have Frederick the Great of Prussia, hungry for access to the Baltic Sea. And Frederick saw the weak Polish-Lithuanian state, and while licking his lips, he said to have compared it to an artichoke he was going to devour leaf by leaf. Close by at the table sits Maria Theresa, Empress of the Austrian Empire of the Habsburgs. She is a bit reluctant to agree with this idea of splitting Poland and Lithuania. Still, as the other rulers just put on the napkins in their laps and pick up their cutlery, Maria Theresa joins in the end. Frederick the Great supposedly said about Maria Theresa that the more she cries, the more she takes, regarding her changing morality. Stanislav August Poniatowski, the king of Poland-Lithuania, and Catherine the Great's supposed puppet, saw the writing on the wall. And in an attempt to modernize Poland-Lithuania, Poniatowski started to try to get reforms in place. And this alarmed the big 3, who then decided to, take what was theirs in their own minds. Even if the Confederation of Bar had won some support among the Polish people for putting down the Kolyvyshina rebellion, the Poland-Lithuanian Commonwealth was too weak. Almost overnight, a third of the country's area was lost. A bit more, a third of the population was no longer part of this union. And this shocked the surrounding nations, who rightfully questioned this brazen coup. To make it seem all legitimate, Austria, Prussia, and Russia forced the Polish parliament to agree with this partition. However, a young nobleman from today's Belarus named Tadeusz Reitan tried to stop it. Dressed in the traditional noble robes of his class, with a sash for a sword and cavalry boots, he had a traditionally styled mustache and a shaved head, except for a little bit of hair left on top, as nobles up to then previously had looked like. he must have differed from the others at the same, who supposedly, according to different witness account and description, had a more Western dress. Of course, it can be taken with a grain of salt, but they are described to look like the Westerners do, with wigs, their clothes, and all of that. Rayton protested during the same, but his voice fell on deaf ears. The others were either bought by outside influence or kind of just had given up. In the end, as the same was on their way out, Rayton threw himself on the doorstep, tearing his robe open and shouting, "Kill me, stamp on me, but don't kill the fatherland." Does it sound familiar? While much of Peace's national history policy concerns 20th century history, they seem to draw inspiration from these events. Here we can find the base for the views on Polish identity and how, well, an ideal Pole should behave in a crisis like this. And who can blame them? This was more or less a blatant robbery in the middle of the day. So after this first partition, many Poles went to exile, some fighting in America against the British. Others stayed and started work, trying to reform and stabilize what was left of Poland. Education policies and a new constitution were put in place, and these reforms were not looked upon fondly by the surrounding countries. Soon, Prussia and Russia were hungry for more, and in 1792 these two countries moved in and seized more land. An uprising was staged and led by Tadeusz Kościuszko, who had fought in the American Revolution, and this attempt to recapture the lands taken was unsuccessful. In 1795 there was the last partition between Austria, Prussia and Russia, and this would be the end of Poland, Lithuania, and neither Poland or Lithuania would be a country for the coming 123 years. It is during this time we start to see Poland adopting almost a messianic identity of suffering. During and after the participation, there began to become an idea that Poland was or is the Christ of Europe. While traces of this idea can be found way back during the conflicts between the Ottoman Empire, the poet Adam Mickiewicz revitalized the idea. Mickiewicz wrote Polska Chrystusem Narodów, or Poland, the Christ of Europe, incorporating the idea of victimhood into the Polish identity. It also reshapes the Polish identity from being based on ethnicity to one of religion. With Catholic Poland torn apart and threatened by Protestant and the Orthodox Christian, it's not strange that the focus shift from ethnicity to religion. The Catholic Church is still a fundamental part in Poland and a big part on the national identity. And this idea of messianic suffering has also been kinda adopted into the national identity. And we see it clearly in how the Polish people look upon their history and how they have suffered. So in the early 2000s, in a study by Ireneusz Kryminski, a survey was performed and 78% of those asked agree that Poland has been the victim of injustice more than any other nation. And this number has been relatively steady. And according to a 2019 Ipsos survey, there were 74% of respondents that agree that Poland have faced more injustices than any other country has. And with this historical identity of victimhood, it's not strange that the populistic national conservative PIS can use and abuse this to their advantage. We can see the parallels between how they promote ideas of and history of World War II and Poland behind the Iron Curtains, and direct connections to the participation of Poland and Lithuania, an act that was nothing less than daylight mugging in front of the rest of Europe, who idly stood by, basically. And this crime was justified by the 18th century xenophobic Enlightenment ideas, as Larry Wolff put it. The Poles and the Slavs were portrayed by Russia and Prussia and Austria as backward, as barbaric, people desperately in need of the helpful, benevolent, guiding hand of the intellectual superior West. I'm just going to pause the episode here and thank you, my dear listener, for tuning in. It's great having you here exploring the world of pseudoscience with me. If you want to support the cause of educating people and combating pseudoscience, I'd like if you become a Patreon or a paid subscriber of the show. For as little as $2.50 per episode, which is less than what the Loch Ness Monster asked for, you will help me continue producing high-quality content and gain access to a treasure trove of exclusive bonus material. Imagine the benefits of becoming a paid subscriber, where you will gain VIP access to our exclusive pseudoscientific book club. You will have the opportunity to hear me read and discuss the works of our favorite on-screen experts for you. To sign up and become a paid subscriber, simply head over to diggingupancientaliens.com/support. You will find all the information you need to join our community there. Your backing of the program would empower me to create more content that assists people while keeping the show as accessible as possible. So let's combat misinformation and pseudoscience together. Just head over to diggingupancientaliens.com/support to sign up. Together, we will uncover the truth one episode at a time. So, what's the harm then? With a good understanding of Poland's past, let's see what all of this led to. So let's return to the museum we talked about before. We're back in this immersive and emotional exhibition and walking around and experiencing history on both an emotional plane and being fed with fact and information. But something is missing here, to be honest. I believe that most visitors won't even realize it, however. But when you walk down the exhibition, there is a story that's not being told here. The only story we see here is black and white. The Russians, the Germans, those are the enemies. Those are the soul responsible for the slaughter, for the suffering. The Poles are the heroes, the saviors, doing what nobody else dare to do and risking their own lives in this process. And it makes for a good story, but it's far from the truth. The reality is covered in more gray, something that the ruling party, PIS, has tried to solve by enacting these memory laws. And while memory laws aren't necessarily bad, the Polish laws are written in a way that hinder scholarly research and academic discussion. Now, memory laws have existed in Poland and other nations, for that matter, for quite some time. And in 1998, the first version of the Act of the Institute of National Remembrance was enacted in Poland. In short, this law made public denial against the facts of Nazi crime, communist crimes, and other offenses, constitution against peace illegal, meaning you can't deny the Holocaust and those kind of things, laws we find in Germany and many other countries around Europe. And that's not the issue. But in 2018, PIS added an addendum to the act, making it unlawful for a person to publicly and contrary to the facts attributes the Polish nation or the Polish state as responsible or co-responsible for Nazi crime. So at first, this law was kind of sold as a way to try to stop people from referring to the concentration camps built by Nazi Germany as Polish death camps. Even Barack Obama was forced to issue an apology when referring to the concentration camps as being Polish. But the law, as we will see, has instead been used, and I think that was the original idea, used in attempts to silence academics and research in Polish complicity in the Holocaust created and led by Nazi Germany, of course. That's not the disputing part here. It's how much did Polish citizen, Polish people, Polish politician for that matter, participate in the Holocaust. And the reality is that many Polish people did help Jews. Others went the other way and participated in the Jugendjagd, or the Jew hunt. Poles would turn on their neighbors, harboring Jews or partisans. And in the 2016 book, Hunt for the Jews, Jan Grabowski used the rural area of Dąbrowa Tarnowska in the southeast Poland as a case study. And in it we can look at the gray area that's left out in the history written by PIS. There's a large amount of anti-Semitic idea and policies in place before Germany's invasion. As Grabowski points out, during the 1930s in Poland, the relationships between the Jews and the Poles were quickly deteriorating. Anti-Semitic ideas could be found in mainstream politics and within the Catholic Church. In 1936, then Prime Minister Felicjan Sławoj Skłodowski said in a speech to the Sejm that the people should financially boycott Jewish businesses. Just between 1932 and 1933, there is a vast number of reported criminal cases, all of them having an anti-Jewish agenda, and these ranging from vandalism of stores to all-out riots. And these cases get into the double digits just in this small Polish town of Dąbrowa Tarnowska. Grabowski go on to quote the Jewish Polish historian Emanuel Ringelblum, who said, quote, "Where the environment had been infected with anti-Semitism before the war, hiding Jews presented great difficulties, and denunciation by anti-Semitic neighbors were more to be feared there than the German terror." Emanuel Ringelblum went through a lot of trouble trying to document the life in the ghetto of Warsaw and the refugees from Zabałczyn. Unfortunately, he was executed in 1944 after his hiding spot in Warsaw was disclosed to the Gestapo by a Polish collaborator. As we see there was a great deal of Poles who actively and willingly participated in the German-instigated genocide of Jews in the territories occupied by Nazi Germany. Luckily, or maybe unluckily for the Polish self-image, Soviet Russia was also very anti-Semitic. Something that led to these crimes against humanity was allowed to be swept under the rug when Poland was behind the Iron Curtain. And this image of the noble Polish citizen risking themselves for the Jewish people would be, well, the standard self-image that would take quite a hit in 2001 when Jan Gross published a book called Neighbors, The Destruction of the Jewish Community in Jedwabne was released. In this small Polish town, there was a plaque put up commemorating the Jews who were killed in the city. Up until 2001, the plaque mentioned that these people were killed by the Nazi soldiers. People passed that sign daily. Many probably didn't know that this was a lie. As it would turn out, at least 340 men, women, and children were killed by the Polish townfolk. The highest estimate of people killed in this massacre is 1,500. 100. The lower number is what's so far been able to confirm through research and excavations. As Jan Gross writes on page 73 in his books, quote, "The massacre of Jedwabne Jews on July 10, 1941 was coordinated by the town's mayor, Marian Korolak. His name appears in virtually every deposition. He issued orders to others and was himself otherwise more practically engaged throughout the pogrom. While a station containing 11 German grenadiers were located in the area, it's hard to say if this massacre was on their orders. While witnesses claim to have seen Mayor Korolak speak with the soldiers, nobody knows if they actually made the order. Anti-Semitic spirit was present in the village even before the Nazi German occupation. What we can say for sure is that this massacre would not have taken place without German consent. They would have been able to stop it if they wanted to, but what we know for sure, the German involvement was limited to have been taking a few pictures. What we know for sure, at least. We don't know if the use of Jedwabne would have been spared if Poland had not been invaded. Pogroms were taking place even after the war, such as the Kielce massacre, where 42 at least Jews were killed by Polish people. Hundreds of Jews were killed after the war by Polish nationalists. Jedwabne might have followed in these steps after the war, but what we do know for sure is that on the 10th of July in 1941, the townsfolk, under the leadership of their city council, raped, mutilated, and murdered and looted the Jewish neighbors. Not on the direct orders of the Nazi occupiers, but on the orders of the mayor of their town. When the news of this came out, many doubted it to be true, and these people still are around today. Even the new monument that was put up leaves room for deniability. On it we can read, "To the memory of Jews from Jedwabne and the surrounding area, men, women, children, co-inhabitants of this land, who were murdered and burned alive on this spot on July 10, 1941. But it's good that Poland is starting to deal with this, right? Well, here's the thing. I'm not sure if this would be possible research in today's Poland. With the 2018 law, the Polish government can't be accused of complicity. This stretches down to local city councils, as two respected history professors, Jan Grabowski and Barbara Engelking, learned in 2001 when they were put on trial for breaking the 2018 law. And the trial was based on witness account that Engelking published in a chapter of the 2018 book Dalej jest noc, or Night Without End, the fate of Jews in selected countries in occupied Poland. In this account, we follow Estera Drogicka, who was helped by the Sowty, or the head of the village of Malinowa, Edward Malinowski. A little Polish word lesson here. The word Malinowa translates to raspberries in English. And in this account, we see the duality of humans, while Malinowski, according to this account, did seem to help Jews escape, even if he seems to have charged quite a bit for it. The author noted that he took the opportunity to rob her. He is also supposed to have reported Jews that were hiding in the nearby forest to the Nazi authorities. So while he did seem to help at least this Jewish woman, he also revealed the location or others in hiding. Something that's often repeated is that the Germans would punish those who hid Jews with death. And, well, that did happen. Some were executed for hiding Jews, but many others got just served fines. And the author have thoroughly documented and accounted for all their sources in their book, providing a quite comprehensive list of references. Yet, the 2018 law has opened up for researchers to be dragged into court by people who don't like their finding. The law, however, makes it a bit of a civil matter, but the nationalistic right-wing organization Good Name Readout, Polish League Against Defamation, that has, of course, ties to PIS, has taken it upon themselves to sponsor these kind of lawsuits. For example, the one we just heard about. So they even got Malinovsky's niece, Filomena Leszczynska, involved. In later interviews, she commented, quote, "This book is intended to keep us crawling, accuse us of anti-Semitism, of collaboration with the Germans, of the worst things." And this really shows how deeply rooted this idea of suffering of the noble Poles really is in the society. However, the government itself is also investigating researchers who publish on these subjects. Masha Gresham from the New Yorker, who interviewed Jan Grabowski, wrote in 2021, quote, "The machinery of the Polish state is engaged in the suppression of independent research," Grabowski told me. State-employed researchers have been looking at each and every footnote to see if we made a mistake in Night Without End, he said. The book has more than 3,500 footnotes. Jan Gross, whom we mentioned earlier, has also been subjugated to investigation and hour-long interrogations by the Polish government. And this was after he made a comment that Polish people in occupied Poland probably killed more Jews than they killed Nazis. The president even threatened to take away an award Gross got from the state in 1996. PIS also had the museum director of Warsaw's Poland, a museum about the Polish Jews, Dariusz Stola, ousted from his position. What led to this was an exhibition that the museum put up about the anti-Zionist campaigns and purges of Jews that happened in March 1968 as a response to a political crisis that took place then. At the end of the exhibition were anonymized the anti-Jewish quote, both from 1968 and modern times, and they were kind of mixed up. So you would get the feeling that what happened then still happens today. Still, some of these could be recognized as belonging to the member of, guess what, the PIS party. The investigation of Jan Gross, however, was dropped when he retired from Princeton. And while Jan Grabowski and Barbara Engelking were initially convicted, an appeal court later overturned the ruling. Judge Joanna Wiśniewska-Sadomska declared in the ruling that, quote, "the courtroom was not the right place for a historical debate." However, the verdict still has an effect. For example, the section about Malinovsky was removed from the English translation. You won't find it in print of the English version of this book. You only find it in the books published in Polish in 2018. Also, who knows what will happen the next time something similar goes to court. We know that PIS have a huge influence over the court system and appointing judge, and they are not as free as you might want them to be in a democratic state. And this little case study of Poland shows the danger of a government trying to control the historical narrative. While some of you might not agree with my assessment that this is a sort of alternative history narrative, I do stand by this claim. At the bare minimum, I think we all can agree that this is a distortion of history. We have in the past covered how nationalistic governments have sponsored pseudo-archaeological projects in Bosnia and Indonesia, as I mentioned several times. This is maybe an even more dangerous version of this, and something we need to keep an eye out, both as archaeologists, historians, and just people who enjoys history, because I fear it will be more of this in the future in more countries than just Poland, but it's worth keeping an eye on. On that bombshell, we will end this episode for this time. So, until I meet you again, I really would love it if you left a positive review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen on this, or even better, share it with a friend or 2, 3, your whole family. Put it on in the car stereo when you go on a road trip next time. And if you want to learn more about the things that I bring up in this episode, more about Polish history, I've put extensive sources and resources on diggingupancientaliens.com on the episode page for this episode. If you want to support the show, I really hope you do. You can head over to patreon.com/diggingupancientaliens, or if you prefer, you can sign up for a membership on diggingupancientaliens.com/support. You get access to bonus content, early content, extended content, and my eternal gratefulness. You can also become a member at the archaeologicalpodcastnetwork.com, where you get bonus content from other other shows, and you get Slack channels and early ad-free episodes. Then that money goes to support the Archaeological Podcast Network and a bit of all of those who is putting up shows there. And if you want to contact me, you can do that through most social media sites, or if you have any comments, corrections, suggestions, or you want to write an email in all caps in Polish at this point, my email is fredrik@diggingupancientaliens.com. Now, Sandra Martelor created the intro music, and our outro is by the band called Tradskruv, who sings their song Foliehatt. Links to both of these artists can be found in the show notes. Until next time, keep shoveling that science.
Men jag skyddar mig, för jag har foliehatt. Och så säger ni, det är en galen fantasi att dödens manipulerar oss med telepati. Ni tycker att jag redan är besatt, men jag skyddar mig, för jag har foliehatt.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. Remember that we have a subscription going on. You can become a patron or other subscriber for as little as $2.50 per episode. Go to diggingupancientaliens.com/support. That is, go to diggingupancientaliens.com/support to read more information and sign up right there.